Following my husband's passing, my daughter and her spouse declared, "You're not her real mother," and compelled a DNA test to exclude me from his will. Yet when the doctor unveiled the results, my daughter's face instantly blanched. The unforeseen DNA revelation wasn't mine at all. Can you even imagine looking your own daughter in the eye, and having her demand a DNA test? Not because she was curious, but because she wanted to prove I wasn't her real mother, all to steal her father's inheritance. My husband, Robert, had only been gone 2 years, and now this? But when the doctor finally revealed those results, you should have seen my son-in-law's face. It went white as a ghost, and my daughter just stood there, frozen. They thought they could outsmart a 65-year-old widow. Oh honey, let me tell you, that DNA evidence was about to shatter their greedy little delusion. It was a Monday evening in October, and the Portland air was crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke and dying leaves. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. 2 years. 2 years since Robert died, and I still reached for his hand on long drives. Still turned to share observations with an empty passenger seat. "Wish me luck," I whispered to the silence, not really sure why I was saying it, but knowing deep down, I'd need it. The houses on their street glowed with warm light, families gathering, lives continuing. Mine felt like it was about to fracture. Samuel answered the door before I could even knock. My son-in-law, impeccably dressed as always, that practiced smile on his face that I'd never quite trusted. His handshake was firm, professional. The kind that screamed, "I'm in control here." "Diane," he said. Not Mom, like he used to. Just Diane. Formal. Cold. "Come in. We've been expecting you." Expecting. Like I was a business appointment. Ice went through my veins. Then Brenda appeared behind him in the hallway. My daughter. 39 years old, a high school English teacher, with Robert's thoughtful eyes, and I always thought a gentle soul. Too trusting for this world. She wore a blue cardigan I'd given her last Christmas. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun. She wouldn't meet my gaze. "Hi, Mom," she whispered, the word barely audible. The dining room table was set for 3. A roasted chicken, fresh bread, the good china, crystal glasses. Everything appeared normal. Everything felt completely wrong. We made small talk as we ate. The weather. Brenda's students. The foundation I'd been planning in Robert's name. But attention hung over the table like a storm cloud, ready to break. I watched them. The way Samuel's hand found Brenda's wrist when she started to speak. The way she paused, glancing at him before continuing. The way his jaw tightened when I mentioned Robert's name. These were small things, the kind of details you miss if you're not really paying attention. But I'd been a school nurse for 35 years. I knew how to read bodies. I knew how to spot the signs when something was deeply, terribly wrong. Samuel set down his fork with deliberate, almost theatrical precision. "Diane, we need to discuss something important." I waited, my water glass steady in my hand despite my racing pulse. "With Robert's estate still in probate," he continued, his tone shifting into something rehearsed, "we need certainty about the legal aspects of the inheritance. There have been some discrepancies in the family records." The room tilted. My breath hitched. Discrepancies? Questions about documentation? Samuel leaned forward, elbows on the table. Questions that need to be resolved before the estate can be properly distributed. My chest tightened. "What kind of questions, Samuel?" He glanced at Brenda. A silent communication passed between them. She looked away. "We need a DNA test," Samuel said flatly, "to confirm the legal relationship between you and Brenda. For everyone's protection." The words hit me like a physical blow. A DNA test. My daughter. The child I'd rocked through nightmares, taught to ride a bike, sat with through pneumonia at 7. She was asking me to prove our bond was real. "Brenda." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Why would you ask such a thing?" She flinched, her hands twisted in her lap, knuckles white. Samuel answered for her. "It's nothing personal, Diane. But with the size of Robert's estate, the construction company, the properties, the investments, we need proper documentation. Any legitimate parent would want to settle this." Legitimate parent. The word stung like alcohol on an open wound. I turned to my daughter. I really looked at her. "Do you believe this?" Her face crumpled slightly. Tears gathered in her eyes. But Samuel's hand found hers on the table, squeezing, controlling. "Mom, it's just a formality." Her voice was small, rehearsed. "You shouldn't be afraid if there's nothing to hide. Samuel says any legitimate parent would want to settle this properly." Samuel says? When had my daughter started letting her husband's voice replace her own? Samuel produced a document from beneath his napkin. He'd had it ready all along. A consent form for DNA testing, already filled out, except for my signature. The letterhead read, Portland Genetics Center. Sign this by Friday, he said, the warmth gone entirely from his voice. Otherwise, we'll have to assume you're hiding something that disqualifies you from Robert's estate. I stared at the form. Black text on white paper. A checkbox. A signature line. My whole life as Brenda's mother reduced to a legal formality. Something about Samuel nagged at me. The set of his jaw when he thought he'd won. The cold calculation in his eyes. The way he gripped Brenda's hand like a possession, not a partnership. Had I seen that look before? I'll think about it, I said quietly, standing. The chair scraped against the hardwood floor, too loud in the sudden silence. Brenda rose too. Mom, she started. It's all right, sweetheart. I moved around the table and kissed her cheek. Her skin was cold. She smelled like the lavender soap I'd given her, the same kind I'd used when she was little. Even though she just asked me to prove I had the right to call her sweetheart. I picked up the consent form, folded it once, twice, and tucked it into my purse. Samuel's eyes followed the movement, victorious. Satisfied, he thought he'd won. I left their house that night, knowing something fundamental had shattered between us. The October wind cut through my coat as I walked to my car. The consent form crumpled in my fist. But what I didn't yet know was how deep this betrayal would go. Or that the answers I needed were waiting, in a letter my husband had written, sealed and hidden away for exactly this moment. The house was dark when I arrived home. It had been dark every evening for 2 years. Ever since the cancer finally took Robert, and I became just one person rattling around in a home built for two. I didn't turn on the lights immediately. Somehow the darkness felt appropriate for what had just happened. I sank onto the living room couch, the same cream-colored sectional where Robert and I had spent countless evenings, reading side by side. His presence had been so familiar that I could almost feel it now. Almost. My purse sat beside me. The consent form inside felt like it was burning through the leather. A memory surfaced, sharp and clear despite the 2 years. If they ever questioned her place in this family. Robert's voice. Not from weeks ago, but from that last lucid conversation we'd had, 3 days before the cancer finally claimed him. I'd been adjusting his pillows in our bedroom. The hospice nurse had just left. The morphine pump hummed softly. His hand had gripped mine with surprising strength. Promise me you'll remember, he'd said, his gray eyes urgent despite the haze. If they ever make you doubt, if anyone tries to suggest Brenda isn't ours, there are things I've prepared. You'll know when the time comes. I'd promised, not understanding then what he meant. I understood now. My feet carried me upstairs, almost without conscious thought, down the familiar hallway. Past Brenda's childhood bedroom, now a guest room, but still decorated with her high school awards and photos. Into our bedroom. My bedroom now, though I still couldn't think of it that way. The mahogany keepsake box sat on Robert's dresser, exactly where I'd left it after the funeral. Cherrywood, hand-carved, a gift from his father. I'd avoided opening it for 2 years, unable to face the flood of memories. Tonight, I had no choice. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. The smell hit me first. Robert's cologne. Sandalwood and cedar. I'd kept one of his shirts in the box. Beneath it, the folded flag from his military service. The Purple Heart he never talked about. The watch his father had given him on his 21st birthday. And there, tucked beneath everything else, a cream-colored envelope. My breath caught. The paper was heavier than ordinary stationery. Expensive, the kind Robert used for important business correspondence. His distinctive, angular handwriting covered the front in dark blue ink from the fountain pen I'd given him on our 10th anniversary. The words stopped me cold. Only open if they questioned whether Brenda is truly your daughter. My fingers traced the letters. He'd known. Somehow my husband had known this day would come. The envelope was sealed with red wax, pressed with his signet ring. The one with the Harper family crest that had been his grandfather's. The same ring now sitting in Brenda's jewelry box, a gift Robert had given her on her 30th birthday. Wear it when you need to remember who you are, he told her. A Harper. Not by blood, but by choice. I held the letter to my chest, tears finally spilling over. Part of me wanted to rip it open immediately. To find whatever answers, or comfort, or instructions Robert had left me. But another part, the part that had loved him for 43 years, knew better. Robert had been methodical. Careful. A construction company owner who planned every detail, who thought 10 steps ahead, who never left anything to chance. If he'd sealed this letter with his signet ring and given it such specific instructions, there was a reason. I placed it on my nightstand, within reach but unopened. Whatever wisdom he'd left me, whatever evidence or explanation lay inside, I would honor his wishes. The time would come soon enough. My phone buzzed, shattering the silence. Patricia Fleming's name glowed on the screen. Robert's law partner. His friend since college. The woman who delivered the eulogy at his funeral with tears streaming down her face, talking about the man who changed her life by believing in her when no one else did. I answered on the second ring. Patricia? Diane. Her voice was tight with an urgency I'd rarely heard from the usually composed attorney. We need to talk. Tomorrow morning. There are things Robert left behind. Things you need to see before Friday. Before I had to sign that consent form. What things? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Not over the phone. A pause. Papers rustling in the background. Come to my office at 9. And Diane? Yes? Bring that envelope you found. The one with the red wax seal. Robert told me about it 2 years ago. I think we're going to need it. The line went dead. I sat in the darkness of my bedroom, holding my phone in one hand and staring at the cream-colored envelope on my nightstand. Robert had told Patricia about it 2 years ago. Before he died. He'd planned for this moment. But what did he see coming? And how had he known? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that went cold, watching the October moon through the window, trying to remember if there had been signs. Warnings I'd missed. Samuel had seemed perfect when Brenda brought him home 5 years ago. A certified public accountant from Boston. Successful, well-educated, attentive to Brenda in a way that made her glow. Robert had been welcoming. He'd offered Samuel a position at Harper Construction, managing the company's finances. Mentorship, he'd called it. A way to bring Samuel into the family business. I thought it was generous. Now I wondered if Robert had been keeping his enemies close. The kitchen clock ticked toward dawn. The consent form sat on the table before me, smoothed out now from where I'd crumpled it. Friday. 4 days to sign it. Or to figure out what Robert had been planning. Tuesday morning arrived with gray skies that matched my mood. I'd managed 3 hours of sleep, plagued by dreams of Robert trying to tell me something I couldn't quite hear. Patricia Fleming's law office overlooked Casco Bay from the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse building. Through the tall windows, sailboats bobbed in the October wind. Seagulls wheeled and cried. The water was dark, choppy, restless. Patricia looked like she hadn't slept either. You look exhausted, she said, rising from behind her mahogany desk to embrace me. We'd known each other for over 20 years. She and Robert had been law school classmates at Boston University before becoming partners in Fleming and Harper LLP. If anyone understood what he'd been thinking in those final months, it was her. I didn't sleep much, I admitted, settling into one of the leather chairs across from her desk. Your call last night, Patricia. What's going on? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she moved to her office door, locked it, and pulled down the interior blinds. The click of the lock echoed in the quiet room. Then she returned to her desk and placed a thick accordion folder between us. Robert knew this was coming, Diane. Her voice was low, controlled. Not the specifics, perhaps, but he knew someone would eventually try to attack your family. That's why he spent the last year of his life building safeguards. My stomach tightened. Attack. It was the right word. She opened the folder, revealing pages of legal documents, each tab color-coded and labeled. Do you remember when Robert revised his will 18 months ago? I nodded slowly. It had been December 2022. Robert had been insistent, almost urgent, about updating everything. The paperwork had taken weeks. He'd been so matter-of-fact about it, I said. Told me I didn't need to bother with the details, that he was just making sure everything was properly organized. Patricia's jaw tightened. He was doing more than organizing. She slid a document toward me. Heavy bond paper, legal blue backing, official seals. The last will and testament of Robert James Harper. Her finger tapped Article 7, highlighted in yellow. I read it once, twice. The words didn't make sense at first. Then they did. Any heir or beneficiary who demands, requests, or initiates DNA testing for the purpose of challenging another family member's legitimacy or inheritance rights shall immediately and irrevocably forfeit all claims to the Harper estate, including but not limited to financial assets, property, business interests, and personal effects. My breath stopped. He set a trap, I whispered. A legal mousetrap, Patricia confirmed, leaning back in her chair. Robert anticipated someone might use Brenda's adoption against her. So he made that very action trigger their own disqualification. I thought of Samuel's insistence Monday night. The consent form he pushed across the table with such confidence. The deadline he'd set. He had no idea what he was walking into. But why? My voice barely rose above a whisper. Why would anyone do this? Patricia's expression hardened. It's not about Brenda, Diane. It never was. She pulled out another folder, this one thinner. A single name tab, Reynolds. Robert discovered something troubling about Samuel. He hired investigators to look into his background. Samuel. The son-in-law who'd seemed too good to be true. The accountant from Boston who'd swept Brenda off her feet at a bookstore 5 years ago. Too good to be true. The phrase echoed in my mind. What did he find? I asked. Patricia opened the folder carefully, like she was handling something dangerous. Inside was a photograph. Black and white, slightly grainy. A man in his 40s standing outside a construction trailer. The Harper Construction logo visible on the building behind him. Frank Reynolds, Patricia said quietly. Robert's project manager. 20 years ago. I stared at the photo. There was something familiar about the man's face. The set of his shoulders. The eyes? I breathed. He has the same eyes as Samuel. Same last name, too. Patricia pulled out more documents. Frank Reynolds worked for Harper Construction from 1998 to 2004. Managed 3 major projects. Robert trusted him completely. She paused, meeting my gaze. Until Robert discovered Frank had embezzled $50,000 over 18 months. The room seemed to close in around me. Robert had to fire him. Patricia continued. Report him. Frank's career was destroyed. His reputation ruined. No one in the Portland construction industry would hire him. She slid another document across the desk. An obituary from the Portland Press-Herald dated November 2004. Frank Reynolds, 45, of South Portland, passed away unexpectedly. Beloved husband of Barbara and father of Samuel, 6 months after the firing. Patricia said softly. Frank took his own life. The air left my lungs. Samuel is Frank Reynolds' son, I said. I see. It wasn't a question. 22 years old when his father died. Old enough to remember everything. Old enough to blame Robert for what happened. Patricia pulled out more photos. Samuel and Brenda at their wedding 5 years ago. Samuel shaking Robert's hand. The smile on Samuel's face looked genuine in the photo. But knowing what I knew now, I could see something else. Something calculating behind that smile. Robert recognized him? I asked. At the wedding reception, he said the resemblance to Frank was unmistakable. Patricia's voice was grim. But instead of confronting Samuel immediately, Robert did what he did best. He investigated. He documented. He planned. She pulled out a handwritten list in Robert's distinctive script. My eyes filled with tears seeing his writing again. The list read, David Sullivan, private investigator. Sarah Mitchell, forensic accountant. Gregory Bennett, adoption attorney. Dr. James Anderson, genetic specialist. And at the bottom, circled in red ink, Samuel Reynolds. Robert hired a private investigator, I said. 18 months ago, right after the wedding? Patricia pulled out a thick file. David Sullivan is a former Portland PD detective. Robert had him conduct a full background check on Samuel. And Samuel changed his name in 2010. He was born Francis Reynolds Jr., but legally changed it to Samuel Reynolds when he was 28. 6 years after his father's death. To distance himself from the scandal. Exactly. He attended Boston College on a legitimate academic scholarship, got his CPA license, built a respectable career. Then in 2018, he returned to Portland. The same year Brenda joined that online book club. I said slowly, pieces clicking together. Their chance meeting at Longfellow Books wasn't chance, Diane. Sullivan's surveillance showed Samuel had been tracking Brenda's social media for 6 months before they met. My hands clenched into fists. He targeted her. Yes. Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. And Robert knew from the very beginning. He knew, but he couldn't prove intent. He couldn't protect Brenda without evidence. So he gave Samuel a job, I said bitterly. Brought him into the company, gave him access. Access to the finances. Access to company records. And then he watched. He waited. He documented. She pulled out another folder. This one bulging with papers. And Samuel didn't disappoint. My mouth went dry. What did he do? Patricia spread bank statements across the desk. Yellow highlighter marked certain transactions. Red circles emphasized amounts. Over the last 8 months of Robert's life, Samuel made systematic withdrawals from the company account. $5,000 here, $7,000 there. Always with plausible vendor names, properly documented. She pointed to an entry, Morrison Masonry, $6,500. Except Morrison Masonry doesn't exist, Patricia said flatly. Neither does Coastal Concrete Supplies, or Portland Plumbing Solutions, or any of the other vendors Samuel created invoices for. I stared at the numbers. They blurred together as rage built in my chest. How much? $95,000. The number hung in the air between us. Samuel had stolen $95,000 from my dying husband's company. There is more, Patricia said quietly. She pulled out another document. A bank account statement I didn't recognize. The money was funneled into this secondary account. Opened 3 years ago, 6 months before Samuel married Brenda. My eyes caught on the account holder names, Samuel Reynolds and Barbara Reynolds. His mother, I breathed. Co-signers on everything. Which means this wasn't opportunistic theft, Diane. Patricia's voice was ice. This was planned? Possibly from the moment Frank Reynolds died 20 years ago. I sat back in my chair, dizzy. 20 years. Barbara Reynolds had raised her son on hatred for my husband. Fed him stories of injustice and stolen futures. Taught him to see Robert as the villain who destroyed their family. And together they plotted revenge. Does Brenda know? The question escaped before I could stop it. Patricia's expression softened with something like pity. That's what we need to find out. The implications hit like a physical blow. My daughter. My sweet, trusting Brenda. Was she a victim, or an accomplice? Robert didn't think so, Patricia said quickly, reading my face. He believed Samuel was manipulating her, using her to get to the inheritance. She pulled out one more document. Another handwritten note from Robert dated March 15, 2023. 2 months before he died. DNA test. Sullivan has full surveillance records. Mitchell has financial. Forensics ready. Bennett has adoption documentation. Anderson will handle genetics testing. Everything must happen in sequence. Protect Diane. Protect Brenda. Don't let them destroy what we built. Robert. Tears streamed down my face. My husband had been dying, in pain, facing his own mortality, and he'd spent his final months building a fortress around us. The DNA test, I said slowly. That's the trigger. Yes. Patricia's eyes were fierce. The moment Samuel demands that test, the moment you sign that consent form, Article 7 activates. He disqualifies himself from any inheritance claims. But he doesn't know that. No, I said. He thinks he's being clever. Thinks he's found a loophole by proving Brenda isn't biologically yours. I looked at the evidence spread across Patricia's desk. Years of planning. Robert's meticulous handwriting. Bank statements showing Samuel's systematic theft. What do we do? I asked. We let him walk into the trap. Patricia's smile was sharp. We sign the consent form. We take the DNA test. We let Samuel think he's winning. And then? Then when he tries to use the DNA test to invalidate Brenda's inheritance, we show him Article 7. We show him the theft evidence. We show him that Robert knew everything. She leaned forward. And we watch his world collapse. I thought about it. The strategy. The timing. He'll fight back, I said. He'll claim the will is invalid. That Robert wasn't in sound mind when he revised it. Let him try. Patricia tapped the accordion folder. Robert had 3 independent psychiatrists certify his mental competency when he signed the revised will. It's airtight. My phone buzzed. A text message from Brenda. Mom, can I come by Wednesday morning? I need to talk to you. Please. I showed Patricia the screen. Her expression darkened. Samuel's sending her to pressure you. Make sure you sign the form. Or maybe she's having doubts. I said softly, wanting desperately to believe it. Maybe. Patricia didn't sound convinced. But be careful, Diane. We don't know how deep she is in this. I wanted to scream that Brenda wasn't in it at all. That my daughter would never betray me. That Samuel had fooled her the way he'd fooled all of us. But I'd seen her face Monday night. The way she looked away when Samuel spoke. The rehearsed quality of her words. You shouldn't be afraid if there's nothing to hide. How many times had Samuel coached her to say that? I texted back. Of course, sweetheart. Come anytime. The door is always open. Patricia watched me type. What are you going to tell her? The truth, I said. Or enough of it. I won't let Samuel have her, Patricia. She's my daughter. I know. Patricia's voice softened. That's why Robert built all of this. Because he knew you'd fight for her, and he wanted to make sure you had the weapons to win. I left her office at 10:30 with a copy of the accordion folder, a USB drive containing Robert's surveillance files, and instructions to do nothing until after the DNA test results came back. Let Samuel make his move, Patricia had said. Then we make ours. As I drove home through Portland's narrow streets, past the old port shops and restaurants Robert and I used to love, I thought about the boy who would become Samuel Reynolds. Frankie Jr., 22 years old when his father died. Had he found Frank's body? Had he been the one to call 911? What had Barbara told him in the years after? What stories had she fed him about the man who'd fired his father? I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I thought of Monday night. The cold calculation in his eyes. The way he'd controlled Brenda like a puppet. The way he tried to make me prove I deserved to be called her mother. Whatever sympathy I might have felt died right there. Samuel Reynolds wanted war. Robert had given me an army. Wednesday morning, I woke to the sound of a car door slamming. 7:15 a.m. Too early for visitors. I pulled on my robe and went to the window. Brenda's blue Honda sat in my driveway. My daughter was still inside it, hands gripping the steering wheel even though the engine was off. Her head was bowed. Her shoulders shook. She was crying. Something in my chest cracked open. This was still my little girl. No matter what Samuel had convinced her to do, no matter what role she was playing in his scheme, she was still the 4-year-old who'd cried in my arms after nightmares about her mother dying. I was downstairs and out the front door before I'd made a conscious decision to move. The October air was sharp biting. I wore only my robe and slippers, but I barely felt the cold. I opened Brenda's car door. She looked up, face blotchy with tears, eyes red and swollen. "Mom," she whispered. "Come inside, sweetheart. It's freezing out here." She followed me into the house without a word. I made coffee, the good kind I saved for special occasions, and we sat at the kitchen table where we'd had 1,000 conversations before. The morning light fell across her face. She looked older than 39. Tired. Haunted. "I can't stay long," she said finally, wrapping her hands around the mug I'd given her. "Samuel thinks I left for school early for a meeting." "Samuel thinks." Always what Samuel thinks. "Why did you come, honey?" She didn't answer immediately, just stared into her coffee like it held answers. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Official, typed on legal letterhead I didn't recognize. Not Patricia's firm. "I need you to sign this." Another consent form. More formal than the one Samuel had shown me Monday. Legal language? Witness signatures required. I took it, scanning the text. "Tyler says this is the official version," Brenda said, her voice flat. "The one from Monday was just preliminary. This one makes everything legally binding." I set the form down carefully. "Samuel says." I kept my voice gentle. "That's the 3rd time you've told me what Samuel says, Brenda." "What do you say?" Her eyes filled with fresh tears. "I say I don't know what to think anymore." It was the first honest thing she'd said since Monday. I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine. "Do you trust Samuel?" I asked softly. She flinched like I'd struck her. "He's my husband." "That's not what I asked." Brenda pulled her hand back, wrapping both arms around herself, defensive. Scared. "This isn't about trust, Mom. It's about protecting everyone, making things clear." "Samuel says, sweetheart." I interrupted gently but firmly. "Please stop telling me what Samuel says and tell me what you think. What you feel." For a moment I saw my daughter again. The real one. Beneath the rehearsed phrases and controlled responses. Her face crumpled. "I don't know." The words burst out. "I don't know what I think. Samuel says this is necessary for legal protection, that it's just documentation that any normal family would do this to avoid future disputes." She took a shaking breath. "But then I look at you, and I remember you sitting by my bed when I had pneumonia. You teaching me to drive. You helping me pick out my wedding dress." Her voice broke. "And I wonder what I'm doing. What we're doing. Why we're asking you to prove something that shouldn't need proving." "Then why are you here, Brenda?" "Because he's my husband," she said desperately. "Because I made vows. Because when I try to question this, he gets so angry and says I'm choosing you over him. Over our future. Over." She stopped abruptly, pressing her hand to her mouth. "Over. What?" I prompted gently. "Over the family we could have together, the life we could build. If only I just trust him and stop questioning everything." My heart broke for her. This was textbook manipulation. I'd seen it in students over the years. The gradual erosion of self-trust, the replacement of your own thoughts with someone else's voice. "Brenda, honey, listen to me." I kept my voice calm, though fury burned through my veins. "Has Samuel always been like this? Or has he changed?" She looked up, startled by the questions. "He's been under a lot of stress with work. With Dad's death. With the estate proceedings." "That's not what I asked." Brenda bit her lip. The same nervous habit she'd had since childhood. "He's different," she admitted finally. "The last few months, especially. More controlling. He checks my phone. He wants to know where I am all the time. He gets angry when I want to spend time with you or my friends." "Has he hurt you?" The question came out sharp. No, nothing like that. He just..." She struggled for words. "He just makes me feel like I'm doing something wrong. Like I'm betraying him by questioning anything. Like I'm not grateful enough for everything he does for us. Classic abuser language. Making the victim feel guilty for having boundaries. Brenda, I said carefully. What if I told you Samuel isn't who he says he is? Her head snapped up. What if I told you your father knew something about him? Something important. Fear flashed across her face, but also something else. Relief, maybe, like part of her had been waiting for someone to confirm her doubts. What did Dad know? I thought about the accordion folder upstairs. The evidence of theft. The connection to Frank Reynolds. Robert's meticulous planning. How much should I tell her? How much would push her away? He knew Samuel had secrets, I said slowly. And he made provisions to protect you. To protect both of us. Protect us from what? From the man you married? I wanted to say, from the son of a man your father fired. From 20 years of revenge planning. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not without evidence she could see and touch and believe. Instead, I picked up the pen from the table. I'll sign the form, Brenda. Her eyes widened. You will? Yes. I signed my name with careful strokes. Diane Margaret Harper. The signature I'd used for 65 years. Because you're still my daughter, no matter what any piece of paper says. No matter what any test shows. I slid the form across the table. Our fingers touched as she took it. Hers were trembling. Thank you, she whispered. Then softer. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. She stood quickly, grabbing her purse, clearly fighting back tears. At the door, she paused and glanced back. Guilt and confusion and maybe regret flickering across her face. Mom, I know, sweetheart. I said. I know. She left without finishing the sentence. I watched from the window as her car pulled away. The tail lights disappeared around the corner. I was losing her. Samuel's manipulation was working, pulling her away one small compromise at a time. But I wouldn't lose her without a fight. Robert had seen this coming. He'd prepared for it. Now it was my turn to trust him one last time. I pulled out my phone and texted Patricia. I signed it. The game is on. Her reply came immediately. Good. Now, let's see how smart Samuel really thinks he is. I went upstairs to my bedroom. The cream-colored envelope still sat on my nightstand, the red wax seal catching the morning light. Not yet, I thought. Not until I needed it. But soon. Sleep was impossible after Brenda left. I tried lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face at the threshold. That flicker of guilt before she turned away. I'm sorry, Mom. For what? For doubting me? For choosing Samuel? For being part of whatever plan he'd constructed? At midnight I gave up and went downstairs to Robert's study. The room still smelled like him. Old books and coffee and the expensive bourbon he'd allowed himself one glass of on Friday evenings. His reading chair sat in the corner, a blanket draped over one arm. His favorite mystery novels lined the shelves in alphabetical order by author. I hadn't touched anything in 2 years. Couldn't bear to change it. Now I was grateful for that paralysis, because everything was exactly as he'd left it. I turned on the desk lamp and opened his laptop. The password was our wedding anniversary, 081258. The screen glowed in the darkness. Desktop icons appearing one by one. A folder labeled, for Brenda. Or Barbara? Both, as it turned out. Inside were hundreds of files, photos, documents, surveillance reports, all organized by date, starting from September 2018, 6 years ago. Before Samuel and Brenda had even met. I opened the first photo. Samuel Reynolds sitting in a coffee shop, laptop open. The timestamp read September 12, 2018, 3:47 p.m. The location tag said Arabica, a cafe in Portland's Arts District. On his screen, clearly visible, was Brenda's Facebook profile. My hands shook as I clicked through more images. Samuel outside Brenda's apartment building. Samuel at Longfellow Books the day before their chance meeting, examining the classics section where Brenda always browsed. Samuel talking to a barista, showing them Brenda's photo, asking questions. He'd stalked her. Researched her. Planned their meeting down to which books he'd pretend to like. The next folder was labeled, FR Background. Frank Reynolds. I opened it with dread coiling in my stomach. The first document was Frank's employee file from Harper Construction. Hired 1998 as assistant project manager, promoted to senior PM in 2001. Stellar reviews. Robert's handwritten notes in the margins, exceptional worker. Trustworthy. Good man. Then a gap in the files. When they resumed in 2004, the tone had changed. Financial discrepancy reports. Audit findings. Invoices that didn't match delivery records. Robert's notes now read pattern emerging. Systematic. Deliberate. An internal memo dated June 2004, Frank Reynolds terminated effective immediately for embezzlement of company funds. $47,850. Police report filed. No criminal charges pursued per FR's family circumstances. Repayment plan established. Family circumstances. Robert had been merciful. He could have pressed charges, sent Frank to prison. Instead, he'd allowed repayment to protect Frank's wife and son. The next document was a police report from November 2004. Deceased, Frank Andrew Reynolds, 45. Cause of death, self-inflicted gunshot wound. Note left for family. No foul play suspected. I pressed my hand to my mouth. Frank had left a note. What had it said? Had he blamed Robert? Had he filled his son's head with justifications and accusations? The file included newspaper clippings, the obituary I'd seen in Patricia's office, but also an article from a community newspaper. Local man's death sparks conversation about mental health and job loss. The article mentioned Frank's firing only obliquely, recently unemployed. It quoted Barbara Reynolds. My husband was a good man who made one mistake. He didn't deserve to lose everything. One mistake? $50,000 over 18 months? And Barbara blamed Robert for not giving Frank a second chance. I clicked through more files. Photos of young Samuel. School records from South Portland High. A yearbook photo, Francis Reynolds Jr., class of 2000. He'd been 18 when his father was fired. 22 when Frank died. Old enough to understand. Old enough to hate. The next folder made my blood run cold. SR current activity. Photos from the past 3 years. Samuel and Barbara meeting monthly at a diner on Route 1. In every photo, Barbara had a notebook. They were leaning close, clearly planning something. More photos. Samuel's apartment before he moved in with Brenda. The walls covered in papers. I zoomed in. Harper Construction blueprints. Financial statements. Robert's schedule. Photos of Brenda. Photos of me. This wasn't just revenge. This was obsession. A subfolder. Life insurance. I clicked it. Hands numb. Policy documents. A life insurance policy on Brenda. $500,000. Standard for young married couples. But there was a second policy. Same amount. Same beneficiary listed, Samuel Reynolds. But this one had been taken out 18 months ago, before Robert got sick. And it had a second beneficiary listed in case of Samuel's death, Barbara Reynolds. I stared at the screen. Why would they need 2 policies? Unless they were planning something. My phone buzzed again. Patricia. Did you look at Robert's files yet? I called her. I'm looking now, I said, my voice shaking. Patricia, there are life insurance policies. 2 of them. On Brenda. I know, she said grimly. Keep looking. There's more. I clicked through to the next subfolder. Search history. My stomach turned. Downloaded from Samuel's computer, according to the file notes. Dated over the past 6 months. Untraceable Poisons USA. How to stage suicide convincing life insurance payout suicide clause. Forensic detection poisoning. Digital trail deletion methods. Oh my God! I breathed. Now you see it, Patricia said quietly. This isn't just about money, Diane. Samuel was planning to kill Brenda. The room spun. We have to tell her. Right now. We have to be smart, Patricia interrupted firmly. If we confront Samuel directly, he could disappear, or worse, he could accelerate whatever he's planning. But Brenda is safe for now. He needs her alive until after the DNA test, until he thinks he's secured the inheritance. I wanted to scream. To grab Brenda and lock her in this house where Samuel couldn't touch her. What did Robert want us to do? I asked, forcing myself to breathe. Wait for the DNA test. Let Samuel commit to his course of action. Document everything. And in the meantime, my daughter is living with a man who's planning to murder her. A man who won't act until he thinks he's won, Patricia said. Robert's notes indicate Samuel needs the DNA results first. Needs to establish Brenda's illegitimacy before moving forward with the insurance fraud. I clicked through more files. Found drafts. Actual drafts of a suicide note written in Brenda's voice. I can't live with the lie anymore, learning I was never really her daughter. It's too much. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Bow rose in my throat. He wrote her suicide note. I whispered. Patricia, he wrote how she would die. I know. And we're going to stop him. How? By letting him think he's winning. By documenting everything. By waiting for him to make his move. She paused. And by trusting that Robert knew what he was doing. I hung up eventually, but I couldn't look away from the screen. The evidence was overwhelming. Systematic. Terrifying. Samuel had spent years planning this. Not just the theft. Not just the inheritance grab. Murder. Frame it as suicide, brought on by the discovery she wasn't really my daughter. Collect the insurance money. Collect what he could argue was his rightful share of the estate. Then disappear with Barbara. The October sun rose higher outside the study window. Light fell across Robert's chair. His books. His careful notes. He'd known all of this. Every detail. Every horrifying piece. And instead of acting on rage or fear, he'd built a trap so perfect that Samuel wouldn't see it until it was too late. But one question haunted me. How much did Brenda know? Wednesday had shown me she was doubting. Questioning. Scared of her own husband. But doubting wasn't the same as knowing. If I told her everything, showed her the search history, the suicide note draft, the murder plot, would she believe me? Or would Samuel convince her I was lying, manipulating, trying to drive them apart? I needed to be careful. I needed to be smart. I needed to do what Robert had done. Wait for the right moment. Build the case. Let Samuel commit fully so he couldn't escape. I found one more folder, buried deep in Robert's files. Friday. The date was set for Friday morning, 3 days from now, 10 a.m. at the Portland Genetics Center on Congress Street. The DNA test appointment. Robert had already scheduled it 18 months ago. The confirmation email was in the folder, along with detailed notes about procedure, timing, and what would happen after results came in. Results delivered 72 hours after testing. Monday, approximately 10 a.m. critical window. Samuel will believe he's won. Will make his move. Patricia to reveal Article 7 immediately. Sullivan to be present with full surveillance evidence. Police notified in advance. Warrants ready. Robert had choreographed every moment. My husband, the construction company owner who planned buildings down to the 16th of an inch, had built this trap with the same precision. And all I had to do was show up, sign the forms, take the test, and watch Samuel Reynolds destroy himself. I closed the laptop as dawn fully broke over Portland. The cream-colored envelope on my nightstand caught my eye. Not yet, but soon. When the moment was right, when I needed Robert's final words, I would open it then. For now, I had 3 days to prepare. 3 days to protect Brenda without revealing what I knew. 3 days to let Samuel believe he was winning. It was going to be the longest 3 days of my life. But Robert had given me everything I needed. And I wasn't going to let our daughter fall into the trap meant for a predator. Friday morning arrived cold and bright. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror at 7 a.m., studying the woman looking back. 65 years old. Gray hair I'd stopped coloring after Robert died. Lines around my eyes from 43 years of smiling at the man I loved. Did I look like someone who could be erased from her daughter's life with a cotton swab? The Portland Genetics Center was a sleek building of glass and steel on Congress Street. Modern, impersonal. Exactly the kind of place where you reduced family bonds to chromosomes and markers. I pushed through the revolving door at 9:05. The waiting room smelled of disinfectant and anxiety. Gray chairs lined the walls in perfect rows. A fish tank bubbled in the corner, bright tropical fish swimming in circles, going nowhere. Morning light streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. They were already there. Samuel stood near the reception desk in a charcoal suit, phone in hand. Even from across the room, I could see the barely contained energy in his posture. Anticipation. Excitement. He thought this was his victory day. Brenda sat in one of those great chairs, staring at nothing. Her hands folded in her lap, knuckles white. She wore a navy cardigan over a white blouse. No makeup. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but dry. She'd been crying, but she'd composed herself before coming here. My daughter didn't look up when I entered, but her shoulders tensed. She knew I was there. Samuel did look up. His eyes found mine across the waiting room, and he smiled. Not the practiced, professional smile from dinner Monday night. This was real. Genuine. The smile of a man who believed he'd won. He crossed the room, hand extended. Diane, right on time. His grip was firm when I shook his hand. Possessive, like he was already claiming victory. Up close, I studied his face properly for the first time since learning the truth. The strong jawline. The dark eyes that could be warm or cold depending on what he needed. The faint scar above his left eyebrow from what I remembered as a childhood accident. A fight. Frank Reynolds' son. Thank you for being reasonable about this, Samuel said, his voice carrying that false warmth. I know this must be difficult. Difficult? As if he had any idea. I forced myself to meet his eyes. Let's just get it done. Brenda finally looked up. Our eyes met for half a second before she looked away. Guilt written all over her face. But something else, too. Something I couldn't quite read. Mrs. Harper. A woman in scrubs appeared from a hallway. Her name tag read Janet Coleman, medical technician. Dr. Anderson is ready for you. The examination room was even more sterile than the waiting area. White walls. Metal cabinets with gleaming chrome handles. A padded examination table covered in crinkling paper. Medical equipment I didn't recognize lined the counters. Dr. James Anderson was exactly what you'd expect from a genetic specialist. Mid-50s, graying hair, calm demeanor designed to put nervous patients at ease. Wire-rimmed glasses, a tie with tiny DNA helixes on it. Someone's idea of humor. Thank you all for coming, he said, his voice professionally neutral. I'll be conducting the testing today. The procedure is very simple, just a cheek swab from each participant. Quick and painless. He explained the process in detail. How the samples would be labeled and sealed. How they'd be sent to the lab. How the results would be ready in 72 hours. Monday morning, at 10 a.m. 72 hours until Samuel believed he had proof I wasn't Brenda's real mother. 72 hours until Article 7 destroyed him. Any questions? Dr. Anderson asked. Samuel leaned forward in his chair. And these results will be legally admissible? Can be used in probate court? Yes, Dr. Anderson said. The chain of custody documentation ensures they're valid for legal proceedings. Samuel's smile widened. Dr. Anderson turned to me, holding a cotton swab in a sealed package. Mrs. Harper, if you'll open your mouth, please. The swab was rough against the inside of my cheek. Dr. Anderson rubbed it back and forth along my gums with practiced efficiency. 10 seconds. 15. Then it was done. He placed the swab into a labeled vial. Diane Margaret Harper. Patient ID number. Date and timestamp. Everything official and binding. Miss Harper, Dr. Anderson said to Brenda. My daughter stood slowly. She looked at me one more time. Really looked at me. And I saw tears gathering in her eyes. I'm sorry, she mouthed silently. Then she opened her mouth for the swab. Samuel watched the whole procedure with barely disguised satisfaction. When Janet Coleman sealed Brenda's sample in its vial, he actually rubbed his hands together. A tiny gesture, unconscious. The gesture of a man who thought he'd won. And you, Mr. Reynolds? Dr. Anderson asked. As a witness, we'll need your sample as well, for the record. Samuel's swab took less than 10 seconds. Results will be available Monday morning, Dr. Anderson repeated. We'll call to schedule your appointment for disclosure. Can't you just email them? Samuel asked. For legal proceedings, we prefer in-person disclosure. Dr. Anderson's tone was firm. Monday at 10 a.m., all parties should be present. Samuel's jaw tightened, but he nodded. We filed out of the examination room, down the sterile hallway, back to the waiting room with its fish tank and empty chairs. At the exit, Samuel put his hand on Brenda's lower back. Possessive. Controlling. Monday, he said to me. His voice had changed, harder now. Monday we'll know the truth, and then we can move forward with the estate proceedings properly. The way he said properly made my skin crawl. Monday, I agreed quietly. Brenda didn't say anything, just let Samuel guide her toward the door. But at the threshold, she glanced back. One look. Brief. Filled with something that might have been regret. Or fear. Or both. Then they were gone. I stood alone in the waiting room as the revolving door spun closed behind them. Janet Coleman approached, clipboard in hand. Mrs. Harper, Dr. Anderson asked me to give you this. She handed me a small card. On it, written in neat handwriting, everything is documented. P.F. Patricia Fleming had been here, or someone working for her, making sure everything was recorded properly, building the case. I slipped the card into my purse and walked out into the October sunshine. The trap was set. Now we just had to wait for Monday. Friday afternoon, 3 hours after the DNA test, Patricia called my office. Diane, there's something you need to see. The urgency in her voice made my stomach drop. I found her at her desk, surrounded by what looked like an explosion of paperwork. Bank statements covered every available surface. Her computer displayed multiple spreadsheet tabs. A half-empty coffee mug sat forgotten beside her keyboard. Sit down, she said without preamble. I sat. Patricia slid a document toward me. A bank statement from Harper Construction's operating account, numbers highlighted in yellow, amounts circled in red. This is from March through October of last year, she said. The final 8 months of Robert's life. I scanned the entries. Withdrawals, thousands of dollars at a time. Morrison Masonry, $6,500. Coastal Concrete Supplies, $7,200. Portland Plumbing Solutions, $5,800. Atlantic Equipment Rental, $8,100. Robert gave Samuel signatory authority 2 years ago, Patricia explained. Right after the wedding? For succession planning, he said. Training Samuel to eventually take over the financial management. She pulled up more statements on her computer. Look at the pattern. Every withdrawal has proper documentation. Professional invoices. Delivery receipts. Everything you'd expect from legitimate business expenses. But they're not legitimate, I said, already knowing the answer. Morrison Masonry doesn't exist. Patricia tapped her screen. Neither does Coastal Concrete Supplies. Or any of these other vendors. I've checked state business registrations, tax records, everything. She pulled out a file folder, this one labeled Forensic Analysis. Sarah Mitchell is a forensic accountant Robert hired 18 months ago. She traced every single transaction. The money went into the secondary account. Another statement appeared. An account I'd never seen. Samuel Reynolds and Barbara Reynolds, joint account holders. Opened August 2021, 3 months before Samuel proposed to Brenda. They planned this from the beginning, I whispered. Before the beginning. Patricia's voice was ice. Look at the deposit history. I scanned the entries. Small deposits every month, starting in 2021. $200. $500. Building slowly. Then starting in March 2023, the deposits jumped. $5,000. $7,000. $10,000. Robert's money, stolen while he was dying. $95,000, Patricia said flatly. Systematically embezzled over 8 months while your husband was fighting cancer. The number felt unreal. Abstract. Like something from a movie, not from my actual life. How did Robert find out? He never stopped paying attention. Patricia pulled out a leather-bound ledger. Robert's handwriting filled the pages. This is his personal record, separate from the company books. He kept track of every major transaction manually. She pointed to an entry from March 2023. Morrison invoice $6,500. No corresponding delivery. Check vendor. 2 days later, Morrison Masonry business registration non-existent. Investigate further. A week after that, pattern emerging. Multiple suspicious vendors. Samuel. Need full audit. I ran my fingers over Robert's handwriting. Precise. Methodical. Even while dying, he'd been protecting us. He could have confronted Samuel immediately, Patricia said. Could have fired him, prosecuted him. But Robert did something smarter. She pulled up a document on her screen. An internal memo from Harper Construction dated April 2023. Per discussion with P. Fleming, surveillance authorized. Subject, Samuel Reynolds. Duration, ongoing. Documentation, comprehensive. He let it continue, I said, understanding dawning. He let Samuel keep stealing, keep creating fake invoices, keep digging his own grave. Patricia's smile was sharp. Because Robert knew if he acted too soon, Samuel could claim it was a misunderstanding, could destroy evidence, could disappear. She pulled out another folder. This one thick with photographs. Samuel at various locations around Portland. Meeting with Barbara at a diner on Route 1. Always the same booth. Always with notebooks spread between them. One photo showed Barbara's notebook clearly. Lists of numbers. Dates. Names. Estate distribution timeline. Life insurance activation. Brenda medical history. Inheritance. Medical history for inheritance purposes. What did that mean? Patricia answered my unspoken question. They were researching whether Brenda had any conditions that might invalidate life insurance claims. They weren't just planning theft, Diane. They were planning murder. The word came out flat. I saw the search history in Robert's files. Patricia nodded grimly. Robert discovered that too in May. 2 months before he died. She showed me another document. A printout of search queries, time-stamped and IP address clearly documented. Untraceable poisons available USA. Life insurance suicide clause timeline. How long after death can poisoning be detected? Natural causes versus poisoning autopsy. My hands shook so badly I had to set down the papers. They were going to kill her, I said. Use the DNA test to establish she wasn't really mine. Make her depressed about it. Then poison her and make it look like suicide. Collect the insurance money. Patricia continued. Argue that as the grieving widower, Samuel deserved a portion of the money. And disappear with Barbara and the money. She pulled out one final document. A draft, written in what was meant to look like Brenda's handwriting. I can't live with this lie anymore. Finding out I was never really her daughter, that everything I believed about my family was false. It's destroyed me. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you, Samuel. Take care of Mom for me. The room spun. He practiced her handwriting. I breathed. Multiple drafts, all saved on his computer, all timestamped, all documented by Robert's investigators. Patricia leaned forward, her expression fierce. Robert spent the last 6 months of his life building an airtight case against Samuel Reynolds. Not just for the theft. For everything. The fraud. The planning. The intended murder. Does Brenda know? The question burst out. Did she know about any of this? Patricia's expression softened slightly. Robert didn't think so. His notes indicate he believed Samuel was manipulating her, using classic control tactics, isolation, gaslighting, making her doubt her own judgment. She showed me another file. This one labeled, Brenda Observations. Robert's notes. Be increasingly withdrawn. Samuel controls all conversations. Be asked about visiting Dee alone? Samuel refused. Be questioning estate timeline. Samuel shut down discussion. Be not complicit. Victim. Tears blurred my vision. Robert had been watching, even while dying. Watching to make sure Brenda was safe. Making sure she wasn't part of the plot. So, what happens Monday? I asked. Monday, Dr. Anderson delivers the DNA results. Samuel thinks he's won, that proving Brenda isn't biologically yours will disqualify her from inheritance. Patricia pulled out a thick document, the revised will, Article 7 highlighted in yellow. The moment he makes that claim, the moment he tries to use those results against you or Brenda, Article 7 activates. He forfeits everything. And the theft? We reveal all of it. The fake vendors, the embezzlement, the bank account with Barbara. All of it documented. All of it prosecutable. She opened one more folder. This one had a police shield on the tab. Robert filed a preliminary report with the Portland PD 6 weeks before he died. Everything documented. Warrants already drafted. They're just waiting for Samuel to commit fully. My breath caught. They've known for a year. They'd been building the case for a year. Robert wanted Samuel to have every opportunity to stop. Every chance to come clean. But Samuel kept going. Kept stealing. Kept planning murder. Patricia's voice hardened. Monday, he'll walk into that conference room thinking he's about to destroy your family, and steal everything Robert built. Instead, he'll walk out in handcuffs. And Brenda will finally see who she married. And hopefully, with time, she'll heal. I thought about my daughter. The guilt in her eyes this morning. The whispered apology. She was already doubting Samuel. Already questioning. Monday would shatter whatever illusions remained. What do I do this weekend? I asked. Stay calm. Stay normal. If Samuel suspects anything, he might run. Patricia closed all the folders, stacking them neatly. Robert did all the hard work, Diane. He built a perfect trap. All we have to do is let Samuel walk into it. I left her office as the sun set over Portland. The October air was sharp with the promise of winter. 72 hours until the DNA results. 72 hours until Samuel Reynolds discovered he'd underestimated a dying man's love for his family. Saturday morning, I woke to my doorbell ringing. Linda Carter stood on my porch with a casserole dish and a determined expression. Don't even try to tell me you're fine, my neighbor said, pushing past me into the house. I saw Brenda leaving Wednesday morning. She was crying. And you've had that lawyer's car here twice this week. Linda was 62, a retired librarian with steel gray hair and the persistence of a bloodhound. She lived 3 houses down for 15 years. We'd become close after Robert died. She'd brought casseroles then, too, and sat with me through the worst nights. I made chicken pot pie, she said, setting the dish on my counter. And I'm not leaving until you tell me what's going on. So I told her. Not everything, not about the murder plot or the fake suicide note, but about the DNA test, about Samuel's demands, about the inheritance. Linda listened without interrupting, her sharp blue eyes never leaving my face. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. That boy, she said finally, has the eyes of a snake. I told you that at the wedding. She had. I'd laughed it off then, as Linda being overprotective. Robert knew, I said. He knew everything about Samuel, who he really was, what he was planning. And he set a trap. Yes, Linda nodded slowly. Smart man, you're Robert. Always was. She stood, brushing invisible crumbs from her slacks. So Monday, this Samuel thinks he's going to waltz in and take everything, and instead he gets arrested for theft and fraud. That's the plan. Good. Linda's voice was fierce. And Brenda? I don't know, I admitted. I don't know how much she knows. How much she's been manipulated versus how much she's chosen to ignore. Linda squeezed my shoulder. That girl loves you. I've seen her with you since she was a child. Whatever Samuel's done to confuse her, that love is still there. You'll get through to her. After Linda left, I couldn't sit still. I found myself in Robert's study again, looking through his files, the evidence he'd compiled, the careful documentation. One folder I hadn't opened yet. Samuel Reynolds' full background. I clicked it open. Inside were documents going back 25 years. School records, employment history, financial statements, medical records that Robert had somehow obtained. I started reading. Francis Reynolds Jr., born September 1982. Called Frankie until age 28. Elementary school records showed a bright kid. Good grades. Some behavioral issues. Fights on the playground. Problems with authority. High school, honor roll, but multiple suspensions for fighting. Guidance counselor notes, intelligent but angry. Difficulty controlling temper. Recommend counseling. No record of counseling ever happening. A gap in the records from 2004 to 2005, the year his father died. Then, name change petition. Filed January 2010. Petitioner wishes to distance himself from family scandal and start fresh. No criminal record. No outstanding debts. Petition approved. Frankie became Samuel. College records from Boston College. Dean's list every semester. Accounting major. Normal student activities. But one document stood out. A campus police report from 2007. Incident, verbal altercation between Samuel Reynolds and Professor David Morrison. Reynolds accused Morrison of unfair grading. Witnesses report Reynolds became aggressive, made threats. Professor declined to press charges. Reynolds placed on academic probation for 1 semester. Morrison. The same name Samuel used for his fake masonry company. Was it a coincidence? Or Samuel's sick joke, using the name of someone he threatened while stealing from Robert? I kept reading. Employment history showed Samuel working at various accounting firms in Boston. Good reviews, normal career progression. Then in 2018, he quit his job and moved back to Portland. The reason listed on his resignation letter, family obligations. What family obligations? His mother. A subfolder. Barbara Reynolds' background. I opened it. Barbara Lynn Reynolds, née Thompson. Born 1959. Married Frank Reynolds, 1981. Employment, receptionist, retail clerk, various administrative positions. Nothing remarkable. But her social media posts were remarkable. Screenshots from Facebook dating back years. 2005. 1 year since we lost Frank. Still waiting for justice. 2008. Some people destroy others and face no consequences, but God sees everything. 2012. Teaching my son that success is the best revenge. 2015. Everything happens for a reason. Our time will come. 2018. So proud of Samuel coming home. Big things ahead. Big things like marrying Brenda. Like infiltrating our family? More screenshots. These from private messages that Robert's investigators somehow obtained. Barbara to Samuel, June 2018. Found the daughter's profile. She's perfect. Trusting. Exactly what we need. Samuel to Barbara, July 2018. She likes books. Classic literature. I'll start there. Barbara to Samuel, September 2018. Take your time. Make it real. We've waited 20 years. We can wait a few more months. My stomach churned. They'd planned it all. Every moment of Samuel and Brenda's romance had been calculated. The worst was a message from October 2018, the week before Samuel, accidentally, met Brenda at the bookstore. Samuel to Barbara. Ready? I've memorized her favorite authors, her routine, her vulnerabilities. She won't see me coming. Barbara's response. Make her love you. Make the old woman trust you. Then we take everything they stole from us. Everything they stole. In Barbara's mind, Robert hadn't fired Frank for embezzlement. Robert had stolen Frank's future, his reputation, his life. And now she and Samuel were going to steal ours in return. I closed the laptop, feeling sick. These weren't opportunistic criminals. They were true believers in their own twisted narrative. They'd convinced themselves they were the victims. That we were the villains. That theft and murder were justified revenge. My phone rang. Patricia. Have you been reading the files? She asked. Yes. Then you understand. Oh, this isn't just about money. This is about 20 years of hatred and resentment. I know. Which means Monday won't be simple. Samuel won't just accept defeat. He'll fight. He'll claim Robert's will is invalid. He'll say the evidence is fabricated. Let him, I said, surprised by the steel in my own voice. Robert documented everything. Every piece of evidence is airtight. I know. I just wanted to make sure you're ready. This is going to be ugly. I thought about Brenda. About watching her world implode when she learned who she'd married. I'm ready, I said. After hanging up, I went upstairs to my bedroom. The cream-colored envelope still sat on my nightstand. The red wax seal unbroken. Tomorrow, I would open it. Tonight I sat in Robert's chair in his study, surrounded by his careful notes and meticulous planning. And I felt him with me. Thank you, I whispered to the empty room. Thank you for protecting us, even when you couldn't be here to see it through. The October wind rattled the windows. Outside, Portland prepared for winter. Inside, I prepared for war. Monday was coming. And Samuel Reynolds had no idea what was waiting for him. Sunday evening. The house was quiet except for the October wind rattling the windows. 24 hours until the DNA results. 24 hours until everything changed. I sat on my bed, the cream-colored envelope in my hands. The red wax seal caught the lamplight. Robert's signet ring impression, clear and sharp. It was time. I broke the seal, carefully unfolding the heavy paper. Robert's handwriting filled 2 pages, written in the fountain pen I'd given him. The ink was slightly smudged in places. Had his hands been shaking when he wrote this? My dearest Diane, if you're reading this, then someone has questioned Brenda's place in our family. Someone has demanded proof of something that needs no proof. I know who it is. Samuel Reynolds, son of Frank Reynolds, the man I had to fire 20 years ago. I recognized him at the wedding. Same eyes as Frank, same mannerisms, same last name. Too much coincidence. I pressed my hand to my mouth, tears already forming. I wanted to confront him immediately. Throw him out. Protect our daughter. But I realized if I acted on suspicion, he'd disappear and try again later. Better to let him commit to his plan, document everything, and ensure he faces justice. So, I built a trap, my love. Article 7 is just the beginning. By now, you've found the financial evidence, the theft, the planning. But there's more you need to know. The next paragraph made my blood run cold. Samuel and Barbara planned to kill Brenda. Make it look like suicide. Frame it as grief over not being your real daughter. They'd collect life insurance, inheritance, everything, then disappear. I found the drafts, the poison purchases, the timeline. That's why I added the trigger clause. Any challenge to Brenda's legitimacy equals instant forfeiture. Not just to protect her inheritance, to protect her life. Because the moment Samuel demands that DNA test, his plan is exposed. He has to move fast, make mistakes, and that's when we catch him. I couldn't breathe. Robert had known everything. Even the murder plot. Patricia has all evidence in sealed envelopes. Gregory has adoption records ready. David Sullivan has surveillance ongoing. Police are already involved. They just don't know it yet. Tomorrow, Monday, when DNA results come, 1. Let Samuel think he's won. 2. Article 7 triggers. 3. Patricia reveals theft. 4. Police are waiting with warrants. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, my love, but I've ensured Brenda is safe. And I've ensured you both know family is choice, not blood. His handwriting grew shakier toward the end, the cancer affecting his fine motor control. 3 things before I go. First, don't blame yourself for bringing Samuel into our lives. You couldn't have known. Neither could I at first. Evil hides well. Second, Brenda will need you after this. She'll feel foolish, betrayed, ashamed. Remind her that love isn't weakness. Trust isn't stupidity. She chose to see the good in someone. That's not a flaw. Third, live, Diane. Don't bury yourself in grief and duty. You're 65, not 95. Linda Carter has been asking about you, hasn't she? That kind woman who brought casseroles and sat with you. She cares about you. Let her in. You deserve to laugh again. To have coffee with someone who makes you smile. To live, not just survive. I'll always be with you, in the memories we made, in the daughter we raised, in the life we built together. But I'm gone, my love. And you're still here. Live for both of us now. I love you. I've loved you since the day we met. And I'll love you beyond whatever comes next. Thank you for 43 beautiful years. Yours always, Robert. I pressed the letter to my chest and cried. Not desperate sobs, but something softer. Something that felt like healing and heartbreak mixed together. Robert's final gift wasn't just protection or justice. It was permission. Permission to move forward. Permission to build something new. Permission to live. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the keepsake box beside the first envelope. 2 letters from my husband. One warning me of danger, one giving me hope for after. Tomorrow I'd face Samuel Reynolds in that conference room. But tonight I sat with Robert's words and let myself feel both the loss and the love. I'm ready, I whispered. I'll protect her. I'll live. I promise. The wind died down outside and I slept better than I had in days. Monday morning, 9:45 a.m. I stood outside the Portland Genetic Center, watching people pass by on Congress Street. Businessmen checking phones, young mothers pushing strollers. The ordinary world continuing while mine was about to explode. Patricia pulled up in her black Mercedes at 9:50. "Ready?" she asked, joining me on the sidewalk. "As I'll ever be." She carried a leather briefcase. Inside, I knew, were copies of everything: the theft evidence, the surveillance photos, Article 7, Robert's video testimony. "Remember," she said quietly, "let Samuel talk. Let him think he's winning. Don't reveal anything until the moment is right." "I understand." We walked in together. The conference room was different from Friday's examination room. Larger. A long table with 8 chairs. Windows overlooking Congress Street. A screen mounted on one wall for presentations. Samuel and Brenda were already there. Samuel stood by the windows, perfectly dressed in a navy suit. His hair was immaculate. His expression was controlled, but I could see excitement underneath. Like a predator about to pounce. Brenda sat at the table, hands folded, staring at nothing. She wore the same navy cardigan from Friday. Her face was pale, drawn. She'd lost weight. I could see it in her cheeks, her wrists. She glanced up when I entered. Our eyes met, and I saw it clearly now. Fear. Not of me. Of Samuel. My daughter was terrified of her husband. Dr. Anderson entered at exactly 10 a.m., a manila envelope in hand. Janet Coleman followed, carrying a laptop. "Good morning, everyone." Dr. Anderson's professional calm filled the room. "Thank you for being punctual. Shall we begin?" We all took seats. Samuel and Brenda on one side. Patricia and I on the other. Dr. Anderson at the head. Like opposing armies at a negotiation table. Dr. Anderson opened the manila envelope with deliberate care. "I have the results of the DNA analysis conducted last Friday, as requested. This is a maternity test comparing samples from Diane Harper and Brenda Harper Reynolds." He pulled out a document, official letterhead, charts and numbers I didn't understand. "The analysis is conclusive," he said, his voice neutral. The room held its breath. "Diane Harper and Brenda Harper Reynolds share no biological markers. The probability of a maternal relationship is 0%. Silence. Then Samuel exploded to his feet. "I knew it!" His voice rang out, triumphant. "I knew she wasn't her real mother!" He spun toward me, pointing. "You've been lying for 35 years. You have no biological claim to Brenda. No legal right to the Harper estate." Brenda made a small sound, like air being punched from her lungs. "Samuel," she started. "Don't!" He cut her off, still glaring at me. "Don't defend her, Brenda. She lied to you. To everyone about who you really are." "Actually," I said calmly, standing slowly, "I never lied about anything." Samuel's eyes narrowed. The DNA test proves exactly what I've always known." My voice was steady, strong. "Brenda isn't biologically mine. Her mother was Elizabeth Morrison, Robert's childhood friend. We adopted Brenda when Elizabeth was dying of cancer. Legally. Completely. 35 years ago." The color drained from Samuel's face. You knew?" "Of course I knew, sweetheart. Your father and I never kept this from you as a secret. We just didn't see the need to define you by biology when love was what mattered." "But the estate," Samuel sputtered. "The inheritance. Biological children, Article 7, Patricia said quietly, standing. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a document. The revised will. Robert Harper's last will and testament, revised December 2022, clearly states, any heir or beneficiary who demands, requests, or initiates DNA testing for the purpose of challenging another family member's legitimacy or inheritance rights shall immediately and irrevocably forfeit all claims to the Harper estate. She slid the document across the table towards Samuel. You just disqualified yourself, Mr. Reynolds. Samuel stared at the document. His hands shook as he picked it up. Read it. Read it again. This is a trap. His voice was barely a whisper. Yes, Patricia said simply. Robert built it specifically for you. That's impossible. He couldn't have known. Known what? I asked, my voice cold now. That you're Frank Reynolds' son? That you changed your name from Frankie to Samuel? That you've been planning this revenge for 20 years? Samuel's face went white as a sheet. Brenda's head snapped toward him. What? Your husband, Patricia said, pulling out a photograph, is the son of Frank Reynolds, Robert's former project manager, who embezzled $50,000 and was fired in 2004. She slid the photo across, Frank Reynolds outside the Harper construction trailer. Frank took his own life 6 months after the firing. Samuel has blamed Robert ever since. That's not. Samuel started. Your father was a thief. I interrupted. Robert gave him a chance to repay the money quietly, to avoid prosecution, to protect you and your mother. But Frank chose differently. Samuel's jaw clenched. My father was a good man who made one mistake. Harper destroyed him. Destroyed our family. And so you decided to destroy ours, Patricia said. She pulled out more documents, bank statements, fake invoices. Over the 8 months of Robert's final illness, you embezzled $95,000 from Harper Construction, using fake vendor names, forged signatures. Systematic theft. The documents spread across the table like evidence at a crime scene. Samuel's breathing went shallow. You can't prove Morrison Masonry? Patricia tapped one invoice. Coastal Concrete Supplies? Portland Plumbing Solutions? None of them exist, Mr. Reynolds. We've checked. Every single vendor you created is fictitious. She pulled out another statement. The money went here, a secondary account. Joint holders, Barbara Reynolds, your mother. Opened 3 months before you proposed to Brenda. Brenda stood abruptly, chair scraping. Samuel, tell me this isn't true. He didn't look at her. Brenda, listen, tell me you didn't marry me to steal from my father. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Her voice rose, cracking. Tell me. Samuel's mask slipped. Just for a second. And what showed underneath was ugly. Calculating. Cold. Your father owed mine everything, he said flatly. Everything Harper built, my father helped create. And Harper threw him away like garbage, drove him to kill himself. He finally looked at Brenda. So yes, I married you to get close to the family, to take what should have been ours, what Harper stole from us. But I do love you. Samuel added quickly, desperately. That part became real. I swear. Stop. Patricia's voice cut like a knife. Before you dig yourself deeper, Mr. Reynolds, you should know Robert left something else. She pulled out a flash drive. A video testimony, recorded 6 months before he died. Would you like to see it? Samuel tried to leave. He actually made it 3 steps toward the door before it opened and 2 uniformed Portland police officers stepped inside. Please sit down, Mr. Reynolds, one said. Not a request. Samuel sat, face white, hands shaking. Patricia connected the flash drive to the laptop. The screen on the wall flickered to life. And there was Robert. My breath caught, seeing him again after 2 years. Thin from the cancer, gray, tired, but his eyes were sharp, filled with the intelligence that had built a construction company from nothing. He wore the blue shirt I bought him, his favorite, the one I'd buried him in. If you're watching this, Robert began, his voice slightly hoarse but steady. Then someone has challenged Brenda's legitimacy. Someone has demanded a DNA test. He paused, looking directly at the camera. Samuel Reynolds, I know it's you. Samuel made a strangled sound. Son of Frank Reynolds, my former project manager. I recognized you at Brenda's wedding. Same eyes as your father. Same mannerisms, same last name. Too much coincidence. Robert leaned forward slightly. I wanted to confront you immediately. Throw you out. Protect my daughter. But I realized if I acted on suspicion, you'd disappear. Try again later. So I did something different. He smiled slightly. I documented everything. The video cut to surveillance footage. Samuel and Barbara at the diner. Their monthly meetings. Barbara's notebooks visible. Robert's voice continued over the footage. I hired a private investigator, David Sullivan, former Portland PD. He's been watching you for 18 months. Every meeting with your mother. Every fake invoice you created. Every dollar you stole. The footage changed. Samuel's computer screen. Search history clearly visible. Untraceable poisons USA. Life insurance suicide clause. How to stage suicide convincingly? Brenda gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. Robert's face returned to the screen. You weren't just stealing money, Samuel. You were planning to murder my daughter. The room went deathly silent. The life insurance policies. The poison research. The draft suicide note, written in Brenda's handwriting. Robert's voice hardened. You were going to kill her. Make it look like depression over discovering she wasn't really there. Collect the insurance money, then disappear with Barbara. I spent my final months documenting your plan, Robert said. Not for revenge. For protection. To ensure that when you finally made your move, there would be no escape. He looked directly at the camera, at Samuel. Article 7 was the trigger. I knew you'd demand that DNA test eventually. And the moment you did, you'd disqualify yourself from any inheritance. A slight smile. You walked right into the trap, Samuel. Just like I knew you would. The video shifted tone. Robert's expression softened. Diane, my love. Tears streamed down my face. Don't blame yourself. You saw someone who needed help years ago when you helped them. That's who you are. That's why I love you. Evil hides well. Neither of us could have known. He paused, emotion flickering across his face. Brenda, sweetheart, you are our daughter. Choice made us family, not blood. We chose you when you were 4 years old, and your mother was dying. We chose you every single day after. Nothing changes that. His voice grew urgent. Don't feel foolish for trusting Samuel. Love isn't weakness. Trust isn't stupidity. You chose to see the good in someone. Never apologize for having a kind heart. He took a breath, clearly fighting pain. To everyone watching, I've been dying for a year. But I spent that year protecting my family from a predator. The evidence is airtight. The case is documented. Samuel and Barbara Reynolds will face justice. One final look at the camera. Family isn't blood. It's choice. It's showing up. It's protecting the people you love, even when you won't be there to see it through. The screen went black. The silence in the conference room was absolute. Then Brenda spoke. Her voice barely a whisper. You were going to kill me. Samuel's head snapped toward her. No, Brenda, listen. You were going to kill me. She was screaming now, standing, backing away from him. The poison research. The suicide note. You wrote how I would die. I was just thinking. I never would have actually. Liar. Brenda's voice broke. You married me to destroy my family. You stole from my dying father. You planned to murder me. She turned to me, face streaming with tears. Mom. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I moved around the table, catching her as she collapsed into my arms. I know, baby. I know. I should have seen it. Should have known. He was changing me, controlling me, and we'll talk. Later. Right now you're safe. The police officers moved forward. Samuel Reynolds, one said, pulling out handcuffs. You're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. Wait. Samuel stood, panicked. You can't. This is entrapment. Harper set me up. You chose to steal. Patricia said coldly. You chose to plan murder. Robert just documented your choices. The officer turned Samuel around, cuffing his wrists. You have the right to remain silent. As they read him his rights, Samuel's control finally shattered completely. She's not even her real daughter. He shouted at me. The DNA test proves it. Blood is all that matters. Diane Harper has no right to that estate. I looked him in the eyes. Calm. Steady. I am the mother who rocked her through nightmares. Who taught her to ride a bike. Who sat by her hospital bed when she had pneumonia at 7. Who helped her pick out her wedding dress. My voice didn't waver. I am the mother who chose her. Every single day for 35 years. I stepped closer. Blood doesn't make family, Samuel. Choice does. Love does. Sacrifice does. The officers pulled him toward the door. And you'll have 15 years in prison to think about the difference. Wait. Samuel struggled against the officers. What about my mother? Barbara Reynolds is being arrested as we speak, Patricia said. At her home in South Portland. Your co-conspirator. Your accomplice. She pulled out one more document. Her diary, Mr. Reynolds. 20 years of planning revenge. 20 years of raising you to hate the Harper family. All documented. All evidence. Samuel's face crumpled. No. No. She was protecting me. She was using you. I said quietly. Just like you used Brenda. Hatred poisoned your whole family. The officers let him out. He was still shouting, still protesting, but his words had lost all power. The door closed, and he was gone. The conference room felt too quiet after Samuel left. Brenda stood frozen, tears still streaming down her face. Patricia gathered her documents. Dr. Anderson and Janet Coleman excused themselves quietly. And I stood there, holding my daughter as she shook with silent sobs. How could I have been so stupid? She whispered. So blind. You weren't stupid. I pulled back to look at her face. You were in love, and Samuel is very good at manipulation. He's been practicing since he was 22 years old. But the signs were there. The controlling behavior, the anger, the isolation. She pressed her hands to her face. I saw him transfer money 3 weeks ago from our joint account, and when I asked about it, he got so angry. Made me feel crazy for questioning him, and I just accepted it. Let it go. Because he trained you to. Patricia said gently. Classic abuser tactics. Gaslighting. Making you doubt your own judgment. Isolating you from support systems. Brenda looked at her. How long did my father know? He recognized Samuel at your wedding 5 years ago. Started investigating immediately after. 5 years? Brenda's voice broke. Dad knew for 5 years that my husband was using me, and he never said anything. He couldn't. I said softly. Not without proof. Not without risking Samuel disappearing and trying again later. I took her hands. So, your father spent his final year building a case. Documenting everything. Creating a legal trap so perfect that Samuel couldn't escape. All to protect you. Fresh tears spilled down Brenda's cheeks. I never got to thank him. Never got to tell him I understood. He knew, sweetheart. That's why he left the video, to tell you himself. We stood there for a long moment, mother and daughter, while Patricia quietly packed her briefcase. What happens now? Brenda finally asked. Patricia answered. Samuel will be arraigned this afternoon. Bail will likely be denied given the flight risk and severity of charges. Barbara, too. The trial will probably be in 8 to 10 weeks. She looked at Brenda. You'll need to testify about the controlling behavior, about seeing him transfer money, about how he coached you to pressure your mother. Brenda nodded slowly. I'll do it. Whatever it takes. Good. Patricia's expression softened. And Brenda, this isn't your fault. Samuel targeted you deliberately. Researched you. Planned your meeting. You were a victim, not a participant. I still feel like I betrayed Mom. Betrayed Dad's memory. I pulled her close again. You didn't betray anyone. You trusted someone you loved. That's not a flaw, Brenda. That's being human. We left the genetic center together, walking out into the October sunshine. Patricia headed back to her office to file paperwork with the district attorney. Brenda and I stood on the sidewalk, the ordinary world continuing around us. People laughing, cars honking, life going on. Can I come home? Brenda asked quietly. Just for a while. I can't go back to the townhouse. Not yet. Of course, sweetheart. You can stay as long as you need. We drove to my house in silence. Inside, I made tea, the ritual that had comforted us through every crisis. We sat at the kitchen table where we'd had 1,000 conversations before. Tell me about Elizabeth, Brenda said suddenly. My birth mother. I want to know. So, I told her about Elizabeth Morrison, Robert's childhood friend. About the call that came when Brenda was 4. About the cancer and the dying woman's final wish. She wanted you to be loved. I said. Not just cared for. Loved. That's what she asked for, and we promised her we would. Brenda's hands loosened, wrapped around her teacup. Do you have pictures? Yes. Your father kept some in his study. We went upstairs together. In Robert's keepsake box, beneath the letters he'd left me, were photos I hadn't looked at in 35 years. Elizabeth at 23, laughing at something off camera. The resemblance to Brenda was striking. Elizabeth holding baby Brenda, love shining in her eyes. The last photo, Elizabeth in a hospital bed, gaunt from illness, holding Brenda's hand. Brenda was 4 years old, not understanding that this was goodbye. She was beautiful. Brenda whispered. She was. And she loved you so much. I touched the photo. But she knew she was dying, and she wanted to make sure you'd have a family. A real family, not just guardians. So she asked Dad? She asked us both, and we said yes. Before she even finished the question. Brenda set down the photo carefully. I'm glad it was you. That it was you and Dad who raised me. Even if we don't share DNA, you're my mom. You always have been. Those words. After everything we'd been through. After all of Samuel's manipulation and the DNA test and the fear of losing her. You're my daughter, I said, voice thick with emotion. You always will be. We cried together, mourned together. For Robert. For the innocence Brenda had lost. For the years Samuel had stolen. But we also began to heal. 8 weeks later, Cumberland County Courthouse. The courtroom was all dark wood and high ceilings, designed to remind everyone that justice was serious business. I sat in the front row behind the prosecution, Brenda beside me, Patricia on my other side. Across the aisle, Samuel and Barbara sat with their court-appointed attorneys. Both had been denied bail. Both looked smaller somehow, diminished. The past 2 months had been hard. Brenda had moved back home with me, unable to face the townhouse she'd shared with Samuel. She'd filed for divorce immediately, started therapy twice a week. Some days were better than others. The evidence against Samuel and Barbara was overwhelming. Robert's meticulous documentation. The surveillance photos. The bank records. The fake invoices. And the video testimony that had been played repeatedly, each time breaking my heart anew, seeing Robert's face. The prosecution was led by Assistant DA James Morrison. No relation to Elizabeth, but the coincidence wasn't lost on me. Another Morrison involved in Brenda's story. The state calls Brenda Harper Reynolds, he announced. My daughter stood. She'd lost 15 pounds she couldn't afford to lose. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. But she held her head high as she walked to the witness stand. After being sworn in, she sat, looked directly at the jury. Morrison approached gently. Miss Harper, can you tell the court when you first met Samuel Reynolds? 5 years ago. September 2019. At Longfellow Books in Portland. Did that meeting seem accidental at the time? Yes, we both reached for the same copy of Wuthering Heights. We laughed about it, started talking about classic literature, and now knowing what you know. Brenda's voice wavered slightly. Now I know he researched my social media, learned my favorite books, planned that accident down to the minute. Morrison showed her surveillance photos. Samuel watching her apartment. Samuel in the bookstore the day before their meeting. How does seeing these make you feel? Violated. Used. Brenda's hands clenched in her lap. I thought someone loved me. Instead, I was just a target. A way to get to my family. The testimony continued. Brenda described the gradual changes in Samuel's behavior. The controlling. The isolation. The anger when she questioned anything. Did you ever witness him stealing from Harper Construction? Not directly, but 3 weeks before my father's death, I saw Samuel transfer $5,000 from our joint account to one I didn't recognize. When I asked about it, he became furious. Said I was questioning his integrity. Made me feel guilty for even bringing it up. Did you report this? No. Shame colored her voice. He trained me not to question him. To doubt my own judgment. I convinced myself I'd misunderstood. Morrison showed her the fake invoices. Did you ever see these? No. Samuel handled all the company finances. Dad trusted him with signatory authority. Even while your father was dying of cancer? Yes. Brenda's voice broke. Samuel used Dad's illness as cover to steal from him. While I sat by Dad's bedside, my husband was forging his signature. The defense attorney, a tired-looking woman named Susan, cross-examined. Miss Harper, isn't it true that you benefited financially from the Harper estate? Yes. So you had motive to support this narrative against my client? Brenda looked at her steadily. I had motive to want my father alive, which your client's actions prevented by adding stress during his final months. Objection. Chin tried to aid. Sustained, Judge Rachel Stevens said. Rephrase, Miss Harper. I didn't benefit from my father's death. I lost the most important person in my life. The money means nothing compared to that loss. I testified next about the Monday night dinner, the consent form, the emotional manipulation. Did you feel threatened? Morrison asked. Not physically, but emotionally, yes. They were asking me to prove I deserved to be called Brenda's mother. To prove 35 years of love and sacrifice with a cotton swab. I looked directly at Samuel. They wanted to erase our family bond. Reduce it to genetic markers, as if biology determines love. The forensic accountant testified about the fake vendors and embezzlement pattern. David Sullivan presented surveillance evidence showing Barbara and Samuel's conspiracy. The poison research was entered into evidence. The draft suicide note. The duplicate life insurance policy. On the fourth day, Barbara took the stand in her own defense. She looked older than her 65 years. Gray hair pulled back severely, thin lips pressed in a permanent line of bitterness. Mrs. Reynolds, her attorney began. Can you explain your relationship with Harper Construction? My husband worked there for 6 years, Barbara said, her voice hard. Until Robert Harper destroyed him. Objection. Morrison stood. Inflammatory. Sustained. Mrs. Reynolds, stick to facts. Barbara's jaw clenched. Frank made one mistake. One. And Harper fired him. Ruined his reputation. Made it impossible for him to work anywhere in Portland. How did that affect your family? Frank fell into depression. Couldn't find work. Felt worthless. Her voice shook. 6 months later, he took his own life. Left me and Samuel alone. I'm sorry for your loss, the attorney said gently. What happened then? I raised Samuel to understand that the world isn't fair, that good men like his father get destroyed by ruthless people like Harper. That sometimes you have to take back what's stolen from you. Morrison leaned forward during cross-examination. Mrs. Reynolds, your diary contains entries like make them pay and destroy the Harper name. Can you explain those? Barbara's expression hardened. Grief makes you angry. For 20 years? Yes. And you raised your son on that anger. Taught him to hate Robert Harper. To plan revenge. I taught him to stand up for himself. Morrison showed her diary entries to the jury. Years of planning. Years of hatred. Coaching Samuel to target Brenda. You used your own son as a weapon, didn't you? Taught him to seduce a woman he didn't love. To steal from a dying man. To plan murder. We didn't. Barbara stopped. Samuel would never. Research untraceable poisons? Write a fake suicide note? Create a murder plot? Morrison placed the evidence in front of her. You raised your son to be a killer, Mrs. Reynolds. For revenge. For money. For 20 years of festering hatred. Barbara's face crumpled. For the first time, I saw something other than rage in her eyes. Regret, maybe? Or just the realization that she'd ruined her son's life the way she claimed Robert had ruined Frank's. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. We waited in a small room off the main corridor. Brenda paced. I sat with Patricia. Linda Carter had come for moral support, sitting quietly beside me. When the bailiff called us back, my heart hammered. Judge Stevens took her seat. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. On the charge of embezzlement in the first degree, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of fraud? Guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder? A pause. Then, guilty. Samuel's face went white. Barbara made a small sound. For each charge. For both defendants. Guilty. Judge Stevens didn't hesitate at sentencing. 2 weeks later. Mr. Reynolds, you exploited a relationship built on trust and love. You married a woman to destroy her family. You stole from a dying man who'd shown mercy to your father. You planned to murder an innocent woman for financial gain. Her voice was steel. This court sentences you to 15 years in state prison. No possibility of parole for 10 years. Samuel's shoulders slumped. Mrs. Reynolds, you orchestrated this conspiracy. Raised your son on hatred. Coached him through every step. You're as guilty as he is. 8 years in state prison. The bailiff led them both away. Samuel looked back once. Not at Brenda. At me. And I saw finally what Robert must have seen at the wedding. Not Frank Reynolds' son. Just a broken man who'd wasted his life on revenge that would never heal his pain. I felt no satisfaction, no triumph. Just sadness for the waste of it all. 1 year later. October again. I stood in front of a storefront on Congress Street, 3 blocks from the genetic center where everything had ended and begun. The windows gleamed in the autumn sunlight. Fresh paint. New sign. Harper Legacy Foundation, protecting families, honoring choice. Not Diane's shield. As Robert had suggested. This was about his legacy. About helping others avoid what we'd endured. Inside, the small office buzzed with activity. Patricia reviewing intake forms with a young paralegal. Volunteers arranging informational brochures. A banner across the back wall, family isn't blood, it's choice. Brenda stood near the entrance, greeting early arrivals. She wore a navy dress and the pearls her grandmother had given her. Her hair was shorter now, cut into a bob that made her look younger, stronger. She'd completed her master's in social work over the past year. This foundation was her idea, turning our pain into purpose. Nervous? Linda asked, appearing with 2 cups of coffee. Terrified, I admitted. Over the past year, Linda had become more than a neighbor. More than a friend bringing casseroles. She'd become possibility. Coffee most mornings, dinner twice a week, long walks through Portland discussing books and life and grief and hope. Robert had been right. Linda cared about me, and I'd let her in. Not as a replacement for Robert, that was impossible. But as something new, something that made me smile again. Patricia called for attention. Thank you all for coming. A year ago, a good man's final wish began to take shape. Robert Harper wanted to create something that would protect families from financial predators, that would honor the truth that family is built on love and choice, not DNA. She gestured to Brenda. Today, that vision becomes reality. Brenda stepped forward. No tears now. Just strength. My father spent his last year protecting me from someone who wanted to destroy our family. He taught us, that biology doesn't define family. Choice does. Love does. Sacrifice does. She looked at me. This foundation helps families facing financial abuse, manipulation, predators who exploit trust. We provide legal resources, education, support. Because no one should face these battles alone. The room erupted in applause. Brenda moved to the ribbon stretched across the doorway, holding oversized scissors Patricia handed her. I joined her, placing my hands over hers. Together. She whispered. Always, I replied. We cut the ribbon together. It fell in a silken puddle at our feet. The room cheered. Linda smiled from the corner. Patricia nodded approvingly. And in that moment I felt it. A warmth that had nothing to do with the October sun streaming through windows. Robert was here. Not physically, but in the work we were doing. In the daughter we'd raised. In the legacy of love and protection he'd left behind. That evening, Linda and I sat in the garden Robert had planted. The wooden bench he'd built held firm. Around us, his roses bloomed, varieties chosen to flower late, to hold on past the first frost. Always planting ahead. He knew what he was doing with these, Linda said, gesturing to the roses. That was Robert. Always 3 steps ahead. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the October light turn everything gold. Brenda emerged from the house with a tray. Tea and cookies. She changed into jeans and Robert's old sweater, the fisherman's knit she'd claimed after he died. Made tea, she announced. Linda, will you stay for dinner? I'm attempting Dad's famous chili. I'd love to, Linda said, glancing at me. Please stay, I added, meaning it. The 3 of us sat together as the sun sank lower. We talked about the foundation. About the 3 families we'd already helped. About Brenda's plans to expand the program. I want to teach people to spot warning signs, she explained. The controlling behavior, the isolation, the gaslighting. If I'd known what to look for, you know now, I said gently. And you're using that knowledge to help others. That's what matters. The roses nodded in the evening breeze. The grandfather clock inside chimed 6. 2 years ago, this garden had been a place of grief, where I'd come to feel close to Robert after he was gone. Now it was something else. A place of peace. Of healing. Of new beginnings growing alongside the old. Linda caught my eye and smiled. Brenda reached over and squeezed my hand. And I felt it clearly. True peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of hope. We were going to be okay. We already were. 3 months later, January. Snow fell softly over Portland as I sat in Robert's study. My study now. I'd finally started thinking of it that way. Reading the latest report from the foundation. 15 families helped in 3 months. Legal resources provided. Financial predators exposed. Lives protected. Robert would have been proud. My phone buzzed. A text from Brenda. Dinner Sunday. Want to introduce you to someone. His name is Michael. He's a teacher. Patient. No pressure. Just, I'm ready to try again. Love you, Mom. I smiled, typing back. I'd love to meet him. Proud of you, sweetheart. She was healing. Moving forward. Not letting Samuel's betrayal close her heart forever. Another text. This one from Linda. Coffee tomorrow. Found a new bookstore I think you'd like. Perfect. 9 a.m. It's a date. I set down my phone, looking around the study. Robert's books. His chair. His careful planning that had saved us all. On my desk, the 2 cream-colored envelopes. I kept them there, reading them sometimes when I needed his voice. The first warning of danger. The second giving permission to live. I picked up the second one now, reading the closing lines. Live for both of us now. I love you. Thank you for 43 beautiful years. Yours always, Robert. I'm living, I whispered. I'm laughing again. I'm helping others. I'm letting myself care about Linda. I'm watching Brenda heal and grow stronger. Tears fell, but they weren't bitter anymore. Thank you, my love, for protecting us. For seeing what I couldn't see. For planning ahead, even when you knew you wouldn't be there. The snow fell heavier outside, Portland settling into winter. But inside, in this house Robert and I had filled with love, I felt warm. Complete. Family isn't blood. It's choice. It's showing up every day and choosing to love, to protect, to sacrifice. It's Robert spending his final year building a fortress around us. It's Brenda choosing to trust again, despite betrayal. It's me choosing to live fully instead of just surviving. Blood doesn't make family. Choice does. Love does. And we've chosen each other. Robert, Brenda, and me. 35 years ago, when a dying woman asked us to love her daughter. We'd chosen each other every day since. And nothing, not DNA tests, not predators, not hatred, not even death, could change that truth. I stood, looking at Robert's photo on my desk, taken at Brenda's college graduation. Both of them smiling, his arm around her shoulders. We did it, I told him. We protected her, and she's going to be okay. The wind rattled the windows, and I could almost hear his voice. I know, my love. I always knew you would. Outside, Linda's car pulled into the driveway. She must have decided coffee couldn't wait until tomorrow. I smiled, heading downstairs to let her in. Life continuing. Love growing. Family chosen. Every single day. That's what makes a family. It always has been. What do you all think? Have you ever had to fight for your family in a way you never expected? Tell me in the comments below. I really want to hear your stories.